on the pasuk V'yar Bolok. Zeshomer Akosov Hatzur Tomi Polo. The tzur, the rock, Hashem, his actions are perfect. Gichol Drochov Mishpot, and all his ways are just. Ki lo hiniach Chodesh Baruch Hu Lumas Olam Piskon Pelos at Lomar. Hashem does not leave any excuse for the nations of the world for the future, where they could come back and say, the reason why we failed is because he treated everyone fairly. Everyone, we speak about equal opportunity. Shato richakto richaktonov lo sato lor k'voshesato yisrael ba'olam. You treated Jews differently. You treated us. The opportunities you gave the Jews, those opportunities you did not give to us. As the Medrash show, whatever he did for us, he did for the world. And what did they do? They desecrated it, they abused it, or they turned their back on it. Ma'osa Kodesh Baruch Hu. Kshem Shemed Molochim Chachomim Vim Yisrael. As Hashem established kings, Chachomim, wise men, prophets for the Jewish people. Kachemed Lumas Olam. They have kings, they have prophets, they have wise men. V'nivduku Malcheim Neviim Chachmim Shel Yisrael. In Malcheim Neviim Chachmim Shel Lumas Olam. And each one was tested. He put each one to test to see exactly how well they did within the context of that he established them. Hamed Shlomo Melech al Kol Haaretz. Shlomo ruled the world supreme. King Solomon. Chen Osel Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the Babylonian emperor who reigned the world supreme. Shenemar v'gam eschayes hasod nosato do'ovdo. Nebuchadnezzar, he even dominated even the undomesticated animals. Zebona Beis Hamikdash. Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash. V'omer kamer renonus tachnunim. And he said many praises of Hashem and many supplications. V'zechrivo, and Nebuchadnezzar destroyed it. V'cherev v'gidev. He disgraced it and he blasphemed God. V'omar elo abomsei ov adam el elyon. I'm going to rise and ascend to Bomsei to the heights, and I will be the equivalent of what's above. Nosel David Osher. Hashem gave David HaMelech wealth. Lokach habayis lishmo. What did he do with the wealth? He purchased the location for the sake of God. Nosel Homan Osher. God gave Homan Osher, as we discussed, wealth. He was the wealthiest commoner that ever lived among the nations of the world. With that wealth, he paid off Achashverosh to seal the fate of the Jews, to annihilate every man, woman, and child. That's what he did with his wealth. And whatever distinction Hashem gave to the Jewish people, he gave that same distinction to the nations of the world. Hamid Moshe Yisrael. He established Moshe as the leader of the Jewish people. So who spoke to him. Whenever Moshe chose to speak to him, Hashem was available for that communication. Hamed lem Bilam. He established Bilam, the prophet of the nations. Also. Look at the difference between the prophets of the Jews and the prophets of the nations. The prophets of the Jews even forewarned the nations of the world that they must behave properly. They shouldn't transgress. And the prophets that he established from the nations, they create a breach that they should forfeit their share in the world to come. All the prophets, the way they behaved, was within the context of Midas Arachmim, the attribute of mercy, not only for the Jewish people, even for the nations of the world. Sheken Yeshaya Omer, Al Kei Me'ai Lemoav Kikino Yemu, that he prayed for Moab. Yeshaya Adovi, he says, when I prayed to God, it was like a harp. Chen Yecheskel Omer Ben Odom So Al Tzorkino, that you have to actually mourn the destruction of Tzor. but the attributes and the behavior pattern of the prophets of the world was with the context, with the midah of Azorius, with cruelty. So Omad Lakor Uma Shlemo Chino Dover, Bilam want to uproot a total nation for no reason. Kach Nichto Parshas Bilam. Therefore, the Torah goes and fleshes out the portion of Bilam. Lodia Loma Silek HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ruach HaKadosh Mumas Olam. Why did God remove it? Because giving it to them and seeing the way it was abused and the way it was misappropriated, because this was the ultimate prophet of the nations, and look what he did with what? With that ability that he had, that he wanted to destroy a total, complete nation. This is, similar, we're talking about the nuclear. Give nuclear, it has tremendous value. You give it to people like Iran, look what they would do with it. They would destroy the world. Others, they take it, it protects the world, keeps people at bay. Or it's used for whatever, it's for energy. They take it, give it to them, they'll destroy the world. So Hashem says, they've proven who they are, take it away from them. You don't let them have it. That's Chazal. So the reason why the Torah is discussing and shares with us the story of Bilam, to explain, understand that they had an equal time, they had an equal chance. And it was taken from them because it was proven that they have no relevance to it. And it would be misappropriated, misused. Therefore, God says it's not going to be. So therefore, at the end of time, when he goes and he's going to judge the world, and then they say, it's not fair, you didn't treat us equally, Hashem says, I treated you all equally. The Jews, they used it in the most productive, constructive way, and you people, you'd used it, the same levels of ability and positions and power, and used it to bring about total destruction and express the most negative characteristics that exist within existence. It's interesting. Hitler, Yamach Shmo V'Zichro, the way he conquered Europe initially, literally, he just marched into countries, just took them over. With an arrogance, with a vengeance, with a cruelty, with a level of not to be believed. He toppled the world, and he wanted to conquer the world. And what was the objective, besides power? The ultimate objective was, with all that power, all that genius, was that there shouldn't be one solitary Jew left on the face of the earth. That was the value of that. That was Amalek. I'm just saying, same thing. You see the two sides of the equation over here, the extreme level of how power could be used in the most positive and how power could be used in the most negative. Question asked, which is not a question. If God knows the future, and God's in the future, and God knows exactly what's going to be, who's going to succeed, who's going to fail, who's going to be tzaddik, who's going to be Russia. So if that's the case, what choice do you have? The Russia, God knows is going to be the Russia, and the tzaddik, God knows is going to be the tzaddik. Is that a question? Mark, what do you think?
It's not really my question. My question.
Wait. We'll start from there. I want to start from that point. It's not. Is that a question or not a question?
Look, God's all knowing, so it's not really a question.
It's not a question, because what God knows your choice. God knows everybody has equal chance. You have choice, free choice. He gives the opportunity to every human being. The tzaddik chooses to choose right. The Russia chooses to choose wrong. Therefore, one's tzaddik, one's Russia. God puts everything on out there. The nations, the Jews, prophets, kings, wealth, whatever it is. Equal opportunity to everybody. Now, why did Klausel succeed? What does that reveal? What does that demonstrate? What does that say? It says that the core of the Jewish people are what? Positive. It proves, and they say proof is in the pudding. That's what it is. Because I gave equal opportunity, identical. One used it in the most productive, constructive, positive way. The others used it extremely to be the antithesis of the first. That's what it's about. It's not a game. Everybody has free choice. The Jews have choice, the nations have choice. At the end of time, when God will judge the world, and who's going to be into eternity. Who's going into the oblivion? There's no excuse why, and that's what we just discussed recently, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. At the end of time, the nations will come. It's not fair. You put that mountain over the Jews, you didn't put a mountain over us. Then finally, when Hashem responds, they say, but could you prove? Who could prove that the Jews did succeed? Could a father testify on behalf of his child? You have a father-son relationship. Could heaven and earth testify? And every one of them, they keep coming back and God saying, no, it's no proof that the Jews are better than we are. Finally, he silences them. They've actually expended, exhausted all their reasons why they're not guilty, but they're still not happy. And finally, at the end of time, which didn't have to take place yet, God says, I'm going to give you one simple mitzvah to do. And if you do well on that, fine. If not, that proves who you are. That's the famous Gemara in Sukkah, in Avodah Zarah. He gave him the mitzvah of Sukkah. Not costly, easy. He puts it, everybody builds a Sukkah. God removes the sun from the sheath. It's literally scorching hot. And the Goyim, they leave the Sukkah, they bolt from the Sukkah, and they give it a kick. So Gemara asks, so that proves that what? They're not dedicated to God. So the Gemara asks, what do you mean? The law is that if you're in a Sukkah and you're suffering, you're in a state of discomfort, you're obligated to leave the Sukkah. He says, but the difference between the Jew leaving the Sukkah and the Gentile leaving the Sukkah, when the Jew leaves the Sukkah, he doesn't kick the Sukkah with disgust. The non-Jew, he left, here we did all this. Look what it's worth. And they kick the Sukkah and walk out. That's the final nail in the coffin of the nations of the world. That proves who you are, that all that you did throughout the centuries and the millennia, it's all coming from the same source. Therefore, you're silenced forever. All you guys, you're all going into the oblivion. That's going to happen at the end of time. But everything is equal opportunity. You chose this, you chose that. You could have gone either direction, but you chose Sinai. They were aware there was a Sinai. They could have joined the group. They said, you know something, if that's what's happening, we're not interested, we'll go in the other direction. But you have the opportunity. He sent Malachim. It's interesting. We find by Yaakov, when he wanted to see exactly the relation between him and Esau, it says Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim, if you remember, right? That's the term. It doesn't say Vayishlach Yaakov Shluchim. He sent agents. He sent Malachim. So Rashi has two interpretations there. Either Malachim means agents, just as a Malach is God's agent. Yaakov sent agents, or Malachim means Malachim Mamish. He sent angels. This whole discussion. So the word Malachim is interpreted to be angels, or it means shluchim. So you could say that the reason why, so why does it say shluchim, a shliach? The answer is because since Yaakov Avinu was the most special of the patriarchs, and he was the Merkava, he was the location of the Shekhinah. So even though they were mortal agents, but since it was a representation of somebody who represents the ultimate spiritual, so his agent, although he's immortal, is the equivalent of an angel of God. Because everything Yaakov does is purely for the sake of Hashem. So therefore, we explained, therefore, the Torah uses the term Malachim because it does. Or we had recently, in last week's reading, when Moshe wanted to go through the Edomite territory, he said Hashem sent a Malach who took the Jews out of Egypt. Who is the Malach? Rashi says Malach is Moshe Rabbeinu. As we find that the Nevi'im, Rashi cites over there the Medrash, which in Rambam, Hilchos Talmud Torah, that the prophets, the Bnei HaNevi'im, are called what? Are called Malachim. They're called Malachim. So because you have that spiritual connection, it's similar to an agent. But over here we're talking about Bullock. Vayishlach Malachim el Bilam, Ben Bor, Pesora. He's sending who are his mortals. What does this represent? It has no relevance to spirituality, right? This is the ultimate purpose, is to destroy the Jewish people or to hurt us very badly. But yet, it's Malachim. I'm saying it's interesting. The Torah uses the verbiage is malochim, not shluchim, although this agency has no relevance to anything of spirituality. It's just the contrary. It's the opposite. It's to uproot and destroy spirituality. Anybody have a comment on that? In his commentary on Pirkei Avos, he has a commentary called Ruach Chaim. He writes something interesting. It says that the Satan, who actually seduces the person to go against the will of God, ultimately, he's going to be the prosecutor. Meaning, on the day of reckoning, when the soul ascends, he's going to be there to testify how the person, so the one who seduces you and traps you, he's going to be the one to ultimately, to be the proof, to be the testimony who's going to convict the person. So he says something beautiful. Satan is a malach, right? What Howard wrote up. He's an angel. When he goes and seduces a person, he can only seduce you to the degree that Hashem allows him to seduce you. The Rav Kalatsky writes, what's the value of evil? Why did God allow evil to exist? You know, he says, the value of evil is not to do evil. Because if you have no alternative, what's the good? The good is natural. So if there's no alternative evil, the value of evil is not to do evil. Because that's the context of choice. Hashem created the Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination, that you're able to go off the cliff. No, there's a question, in the 10 Commandments, it says, Lo tirtzach, do not commit murder. Do not commit adultery. The most vile, extreme level of behavior. If the Jewish people have no relevance, you have to tell me. You have to tell the Chofetz Chaim not to commit murder. You have to tell the Chofetz Chaim not to commit adultery. We're coming off the mountain with Sinai. That's where he tells it, Lo tirtzach. You say, it's insulting. You know what Lo tirtzach says? That as much as you believe you have no relevance to committing murder and committing adultery, innately you have relevance to it. You don't realize that you have a certain vulnerability to this. Therefore, you have to really shore up and create every barrier, every protection that you shouldn't arrive there. Because ultimately, there is a vulnerability for the human being. That's what every one of these negative commandments of the 10 Commandments reveals. You understand? One second. That's what it's about. So he says like this, is beautiful. A king has a son, a prince, and he wants to test his mettle. Is he really worthy to be the prince and be treated like a prince or not? So he says to one of his inner circle, he says, you know what I want you to do? I want you to take this tremendous amount of money, and I want you to convince my son to go to a brothel and be involved there. And so he goes and he tries to convince the prince to do things which are unconscionable for a prince. And he gives him every incentive. And he paints the most beautiful picture. And the prince doesn't buy in. And then after he doesn't buy in, the agent of the king comes back to him and says, your son is special. As much as I tried to convince him and seduce him and everything else, he did not take the bait. The king is ecstatic. My son has proven himself. He's that special person. That's the purpose of the Yetzer Hara, of the evil inclination. Every human being has free choice. God doesn't want the human being to fail. But again, it's to prove who he is. Who are we? So the one who testifies, whether you failed or succeeded, that presentation that he goes out there to entrap you, it's only to prove who you are. Because every human being has the ability to make a right choice. Because that's what free choice is. That's the whole concept of Yetzer Hara. So the same power that could seduce you and cause you to fail, that is the power that testifies whether you succeeded or failed after 120 years.
Thank you.